Hello, it's that time of the week again. It's time for the English live stream that will help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. Now, if this is your first time watching, you're very, very welcome. My name's Craig from the website mansioningles.com, where if you're a Spanish speaker, you can study English for free. And the podcast we have is at inglespodcast.com. It's weekly, and that will also help you if you're a Spanish speaker or not. And if you're interested in actually improving your speaking, then I suggest you go to the website englishcraig.com, where you'll find out information of how to join my conversation courses online on Zoom. And they're starting again soon. Next week, we're starting more courses. There's a new course starting on Sunday, and there's a morning class if you don't like studying in the evening. So check out those at englishcraig.com. And with me today is Lynne from putitlikethis.com. Hi, Lynne.
Hi, Craig. Hi. So, hello to people that have been here before, and if you're also joining, if you're seeing this after the event, if you're not in the live stream, and also welcome to all the new people if they're coming today. I hope we get some new faces today. Well, can't say new faces, can you? You have to say new
viewers.
New viewers or the people you interact with us over the chat file. So new chatters. If any new chatters are there today, it would be lovely to hear from you in the chat file. So I'll go back. I have to rewind. My name is Lynne. I'm from putitlikethis.com. If you don't know me, I'm an online teacher and I specialize in making tailor-made courses. So I want to help people find their own voice in English. So basically, I'll ask you, if you want to work with me, I'll be asking you, what do you want to do with your English? Do you want to travel, or do you need it for work, or do you need to pass an exam, or are you a teacher and you want to improve your English in the classroom? So I ask you what you want to do with your English, and then when we know what you want to do, then I design a course to help you do it. So that's the way Put It Like This works. Okay.
Okay. And if you are watching the live stream with us at the moment, and I know you are because I can see there are 14 of you out there.
Oh, so, wow.
Please say hi. Tell us where you're from, where you're currently watching at the moment. We'd love to know what your name is and where you're from. So say hello if you are watching us in the chat, whether that be on YouTube.
Whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, or
Facebook.
Yeah, great. Sorry. And I want to say, if there are 14 people out there and Craig's technological 15 now, Craig's got all the technological detail there. If there are 15, well done, because I think you're very brave joining this class, because this class, we're going to talk about death. And Craig and I were thinking about this and we thought, will anybody come? Well, I was thinking about it today. I thought, will anybody want to join this dark class?
I think they're dying to join.
They're dying to join. Well, I'm glad we've got it light at the beginning. That's great, Craig. That was a great.
We should explain that. Obviously, dying can be really serious. If you're dying, you're nearly dead, and we'll look at the difference between die, death, etc. shortly. But you can also use it in an idiomatic way. If you're really, really keen or enthusiastic to do something, you can say you're dying to do it. I'm dying to try this new restaurant. I'm dying to see the new movie. So, yeah.
That was good. Well done, Craig, because we were just commenting on the idea that, it's not easy to talk about this topic. People might look at it and think, oh, that's not going to be a fun topic. Craig and I will do our best to keep it light.
Yes.
Of course, it's not a laughing matter, but I think when we chose this topic, we thought, well, it is something that happens in everybody's life. And if it happens around you, of course, if it happens to you, you don't need to speak English anymore. But if it happens around you and you have to say something in English, I think this is the moment when you really want to get the right words to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to
So
say the wrong thing at such a sensitive time if other people have experienced death.
exactly. And so I think really this is the moment as a language, if you're not speaking your native language, even if you're speaking your native language, we all have a lot of pressure to be able to try to use the words in the right way because we don't want anybody getting more upset than they probably already are by a death. We want to say the right thing. So we
Exactly.
thought, well, we'll talk about death today and try to teach you some vocabulary around it, and also to try to talk about what kind of things you can say to comfort people if you need to.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
also maybe to be a little bit philosophical about the topic of death, because I think it
Yeah.
is obviously something that happens to all of us. You can't escape it. What do they say? Death and taxes are inevitable. That's
Hmm.
taxes that you pay to the government, not taxes in the
I
street.
think people avoid taxes, but they can't avoid death.
But yeah,
Uh-huh.
you can't avoid it. But not many people talk about it. So it's something that you think about probably. I'm sure you've thought about death in the past, but it's not something that's usually a topic of conversation. Before we get
Mhm.
started though, I've got to say hello to a friend of mine, Marlene. Hi from
Hi, Marlene.
Malta. Is that like Malta? Yeah.
Ah.
So
No, I think that's
good to have you with us
Malta. She's shouting to us.
because it's so far away. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But it's funny because she says we both look very elegant tonight. Not really
Elegant. What
related to the
this?
topic.
Elegant.
Well, before we came on live, we were just joking about it because I realized that today I had dressed in black, and that was not deliberate. But Craig deliberately put on his happy shirt.
Well, look,
And
what
you
says
said
more
happy.
about life than a Hawaiian shirt with palm trees and exotic birds and cocktails and beach and sun? Nothing says more about life than Hawaiian shirts, I think.
Okay, so shall we get started then?
Yeah, it's just a general question.
Hmm.
Why is it such a taboo subject, death? I mean, can't we enrich our lives and make them more meaningful by discussing it?
Hmm.
And there's something I wanted to share. Just let me see if I can share my screen for a second and show you this picture. It's an hourglass. Can you see it?
Hmm.
And an hourglass shows sand falling from the top to the bottom. Imagine if you had one of these in your living room and it represented your life, but you couldn't see the top. The top of the hourglass was covered by material. And
Mm.
obviously, the older you are, the more sand you have at the bottom. But you never really know what's at the top. So you never know when you're going to die.
Hmm.
And maybe that would make you appreciate life more because every single second would be that more powerful and that more meaningful for us. What do you think, Lynn?
Well, I mean, I think um, I think that's philosophical, but I think the reality of that is a little bit different because I mean, it does happen that there are people who do know more or less that their lives are going to end soon. You know, people who have terminal illnesses and things, they do know that their lives are going to end soon. And I think they have, from my experience, those people have very mixed emotions. On the one hand, they try to appreciate every moment, but on the other hand, I think we all have a fear of it. And I think that can maybe stop you appreciating it. I think you can appreciate every moment when you don't know exactly when your end is coming. If you
Exactly.
do know when your end is coming, I'm not sure that that's a knowledge that is to be sought after. You know, I don't know whether I don't think that would make me live my life better, to be honest with you, if I knew the exact moment. I think it would, I think that adds another element of of pressure,
Yeah,
maybe.
but people who are in that unfortunate situation of being diagnosed with a terminal illness, they might not know the exact day, but they do know their time is that much more limited. So
They do,
whether
but
or not,
it can make it a very sad, it can make your moments very sad because yes, you might know that you have limited time and you want to do certain things, but there's also an element of sadness to it because you are reminded of all the people that you'll be leaving, or maybe
yeah,
the suffering of the people around you because you are leaving. So I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword, that knowing that. But I'll tell you something lighter, if it's lighter. I know that there are people, when you showed that picture of an hourglass, I know that there are people who have their own ashes put into hourglasses. I
oh
have read
really?
about that, yes, that people who, when they have been cremated, we'll talk about that shortly, if you decide to when you die, if you decide you want to have your body burnt, there are people who have their ashes put in hourglasses because they want to remain useful after their death. And hourglasses in Britain are typically used for cooking eggs, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, like when we boil eggs to have a boiled egg, there are hourglasses that you turn over to time your eggs.
yeah, egg
And I
timers.
remember reading an article about some people choose to have their ashes
Oh, what
put
next to your?
into an hourglass because they want to remain
Oh
useful after their death. Well, it's a
no,
quirky
no.
take.
Yeah, but next to your boiled eggs for breakfast, I don't know. Would you like your family member there? No, not
Well,
every morning.
I don't know. It's
No.
not something that I would want to do, but
Yeah.
horses for courses, they say.
Each to his own. Let's look at some vocabulary. So we've
Hmm.
mentioned that death is the topic and death is the
Hmm.
noun. The verb is to die, which
Hmm.
is a regular verb. Die, died, died. And pass away is a phrasal verb, which is very commonly used to as as a euphemism for death, because people don't like to say the word death
Hmm.
or dead. It's
Hmm.
very final. It's very negative to some
Hmm.
people. So pass away is a lot softer. So we often use that. Like, when did your grandmother pass away? Or
Hmm.
is your cat still with you, or has your cat passed away? So we use
Hmm.
that very often to soften the blow, to soften the word
Hmm.
death.
Hmm. I think that's also maybe, I don't know whether that's northern or not, because in the north where I'm from, we don't mind saying when did they die.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know
Okay.
that there is the word to pass away, but for example, personally for me, it's not a verb that I would ever use,
That's
but it's one
interesting.
that you can understand. Hmm. But
Okay.
maybe it is to do with culturally, it's about whether how taboo the subject is. Taboo means forbidden, and we were talking about that earlier. Alejandra, hi Alejandra. Alejandra said, "Can you write that word, please?" I don't know which
Which
word,
word?
Alejandra.
We've said quite a few, so
We've said a few.
probably too
if you
many.
if you can give us a clue,
Or
something that's
describe the words that you heard or think you heard.
uh,
There are some words on the screen at the moment that we're explaining,
yeah.
but let us know if we said a word that you
Hmm.
want us to explain more.
Hmm.
Deceased is quite formal, isn't it, Lynn? To be
Yeah.
deceased.
And deceased is the kind of language that they use in forensics, isn't it? And in the police, they say the deceased. And that's it's a very sort of distant word, isn't it? It's like it's not familiar. So I don't think you would say about any family member that they are deceased. But if you are a neutral party, an official like the police or the medical examiner or the doctor, they talk about deceased, which is it's a very sort of official word, I find. Would you
Yeah,
say that?
very
Uh-huh.
formal and very
Very
detached and
formal, very detached,
separated.
very distant. Uh-huh.
You might hear someone say, "Were you related to the deceased?" for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And no longer to be with us is another euphemism. Our grandmother
Mm-hmm.
or grandfather is no longer with us, which means they're dead. They're
Mm-hmm.
not alive anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to be careful with that one. Sometimes I say, my daughter's no longer with us. She lives alone now, but
Yeah,
she's still alive.
but she's still alive.
So you need context to be able
Yeah.
to interpret to be no longer with
Or you
us.
might use two
Mhm.
together. You might say, "Oh no, Granny's no longer with us. She passed away 5 years ago."
Yeah, then it makes it clear. Uh-huh. Yeah. And
We've
here are
got
some more euphemistic expressions. Uh-huh.
Yeah, go
Now
ahead.
you chose this one, to kick the bucket,
Yeah.
which is quite it's an informal way. I don't know where it comes from. The bucket is the container you hold water in, isn't it? And kicking the bucket, I don't know
I've
where
got a
that comes
feeling,
from.
I'm not 100% sure, but I seem to remember that when years and years, hundreds of years ago, when they used to hang people, they stood on a
Ah,
bucket and then they
oh,
kicked the
okay.
bucket and then they would
And then they would
hang
hang.
them. So
Uh-huh.
to kick the bucket is to no longer be alive, to die.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's from that.
But it's interesting that, because I'm sure that many of you, because this is a TikTok sensation now, you've maybe heard of the word bucket list. And people make a bucket list, and that comes from that phrase, to kick the bucket. And your bucket list is a list of the things that you want to do and accomplish before you die. So people on TikTok, it's very, very common, isn't it? They
Hmm.
say, I want to go, I don't know, to Bali. I want to do a parachute jump. I want to see the Taj Mahal. And they have all of these things on their bucket list which they want to do, but they're not really thinking about dying. What they're thinking about doing is they have challenges that they want to do in their
Hmm.
lives. But there's a lot of young people now who say it's on my bucket list, which means that's on my list of things that I really need to do. Mhm.
Before I kick the bucket.
Before I kick the bucket. Now,
Or to.
with these expressions, sorry, if I may add, sorry to interrupt, but
Mhm.
if I may add, these expressions are usually used by people talking about other people who have died. These expressions here are not things that you would say directly to somebody who is involved in somebody's, like, or very close to somebody who has just died. You wouldn't say to your mother, my dad's kicked the bucket, would
Mm.
you? No.
No, no,
It's you use these expressions to talk about people who are quite distant to you, really. So there's no sort of, there's no emotional involvement quite in the same degree.
exactly. And a
Mhm,
similar one is to snuff it in the same way that you would snuff out a candle or a flame. When
mhm.
life goes, then it, it's snuffed out.
It's
So
snuffed out,
that's
which means the
another
oxygen's gone, doesn't it? Snuff it.
informal expression for
Uh-huh.
saying that someone has passed away. But again, be very careful when and where you use these expressions. They are very informal and they could cause offense.
Yeah, and especially if you were asking, you wouldn't say, "Oh, when did he kick the bucket?" You wouldn't say that. That's not used like that. And you wouldn't
Yeah.
say, "When did he snuff it?" You would never say that.
No.
No.
To
And
meet your
then,
maker is
mhm,
another one that you could use, but that's has more of a religious connotation.
mhm,
To go up to God, for example, to go up to heaven,
mhm,
or to lose someone is also colloquial, but very very common.
mhm,
Unfortunately, we lost our parents in the same year. So that's
mhm,
not that you don't know where they are.
mhm,
They haven't gone out for a walk and not come back. They've actually died. So if you say
mhm,
that you've lost your mother or your
mhm,
father, that means that they've passed away.
mhm. Okay, Ignacio. Hi, Ignacio.
Hi.
Ignacio's got a lovely little thing. He says in Cadiz, the people from there, when they describe death in a funny way, they use this expression: "Someone is digging to lay down soon." How sweet.
Digging, as in digging a hole.
As in digging a hole.
Yeah.
Someone is like preparing their tomb. Someone is digging to lay down soon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we mentioned this death being the noun, dead, the adjective. He is
Mm-hmm.
dead or she is dead. She's gone, he's gone, past. Deadly would be the adjective. A deadly
The
virus.
adverb, isn't it? Adverb,
Oh,
deadly.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
that should be adverb. Yeah, let's
Deadly is
change
the
that.
adverb.
My mistake.
But deadly, the adverb, we don't really use that very often related to death. We use it like Craig said, like there is a deadly virus,
Which kills people.
which kills people. Yeah, I suppose it's related to death in that way. Sometimes you talk about a deadly silence.
Oh, yes.
And the deadly silence is when everybody goes quiet. And you would maybe think that everybody was so quiet because somebody had died. But it's used like obviously a deadly silence you would talk about in contexts that have nothing to do with death.
Well,
It's
you can
just
say
descriptive.
something was dead funny. Means really. It was really
Exactly. And it
funny.
means really funny, dead funny. Mm-hmm.
So more words
Okay.
connected to death. Funeral is the ceremony, the sad ceremony when somebody passes away. A funeral home is where you would go to arrange the funeral, to make arrangements
Mm-hmm.
for the ceremony. And a
And sometimes in the funeral home, sometimes the body of the person who's died is taken from the home, their own home or the hospital, and they are temporarily held in the funeral home before they are finally buried or cremated.
laid to
And then
rest.
and then we have some other things that you can add on to funeral. So that's why the plus sign is there. So all of these nouns can be added onto funeral and made into compound nouns. So we have funeral home, funeral procession. That's when they take the body or the coffin, and then all of the people who knew the person, they maybe go behind the coffin. Maybe they're walking, or maybe there is a procession of cars that are following the principal car, and the principal car that holds the dead person, the body, is called the funeral hearse. The funeral hearse. Mm-hmm. And do you want to do the last two? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, funeral service is
Uh-huh.
depending on your religion, where you would have a formal religious service,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the religious representative would say a prayer or two, and very often there would be eulogies, stories about the person who has died, who is deceased,
Mm-hmm.
and then a funeral reception. Food is often served in some religions, alcohol as well, and that would also be after the service. So you'd have the service
After
first,
the service.
and
Uh-huh.
then you'd have the funeral reception.
And sometimes the service isn't necessarily religious, because increasingly I know of funeral services that have no religious component, but it's just sort of a formal ceremony where somebody says something to try to encapsulate the moment, really. Mhm.
Which can be really awkward if the person was not particularly liked, and you have to say
Yeah.
something nice about them, and you're
Hmm.
struggling and thinking, "Oh, yeah,
Hmm.
must have done something nice in their
Hmm.
life."
Yeah, and
That can be
sometimes
awkward.
I've been to some funeral services that have not been nice at all, because the person who was talking about the person didn't really know them.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
very
So it's very sort
vague.
of vague and very distant and very not very personal at all. Uh-huh.
Now, what
Hmm.
happens in many religions and countries is that you put the dead body into the ground. And we have a verb for that. It's called to bury somebody. You dig a hole. We just had that verb, to dig a hole in the ground. And then you put the dead person in a long box, which is called a coffin. It's just there.
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 That way.
So the dead body or the corpse goes into the coffin, and then the coffin goes into the ground. So that's called burying someone, and the passive is to be buried.
He was buried in Wales, or he was buried in a country or a town. And then, of course, you can't just bury in most countries. You can't bury people in your garden.
In
It's
your
not
back
allowed.
garden.
So you have to have like a designated area in a town for this. And those places are called cemeteries. Now, that's a difficult, I call it a cemetery. What do you call it? Do you say cemetery? Or do you say
Cemetery. The same as you.
cemetery? The same
Cemetery.
as me. So the pronunciation there is a little bit odd. Cemetery. So we don't say cemetery. We say cemetery. Cemetery.
Three syllables.
Mm-hmm.
Although you don't have to put people into the ground and bury them in a coffin, you can burn them. And if you burn a dead body, it's called cremation. And the person is cremated. That's the passive. To cremate is the active verb. You cremate somebody. And when you cremate somebody, what's left, the remains of the person, are called ashes. Ash. The same word that would use if you're a smoker. What's in the ashtray? The ashes of the dead person, which is often put in a special container called an urn.
Urn.
An urn.
Unless it is put in the hourglass, if you want to be
Unless
useful
it's
after your death.
for your boiled eggs in the morning. Ooh,
Yeah.
horrible. And what some
Okay.
people do is that they sprinkle the ashes. If you sprinkle salt on your dinner, it doesn't all go in one place. You spread the ashes around, and that's to sprinkle. So ashes can be sprinkled at sea. They can be sprinkled in a forest, in a mountain, anywhere that the deceased wanted to go to rest at the end.
To sprinkle the ashes. Maria is saying the cemetery pronunciation is kind of hard. Well, it isn't really. Just say sema, and then think of a tree. Cemetery. There you are. Cemetery.
And the
Cemetery.
stress is on the first syllable.
On the first. Cemetery.
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 Yep.
That's it.
Question from Marlin. Lynn, what's the name of the car people follow? It contains the body. A
Ooh.
hearse.
Ask Craig that, Marlin. I don't know.
A hearse. It's in the chat.
No,
Marlin.
the name of the car that the people follow. Sorry. No, sorry, I beg your pardon. That is the hearse. We had that.
Yeah.
I thought it was that you were asking me the name of the car that follows the hearse. I don't think that has a name, does it? That's just the principal guests are in the first one. But no, sorry, the car with the flowers and the coffin is called the hearse. Which is also a bit of a tricky spelling and pronunciation. Think of her, like his and her, and then you just put an S at the end. Hearse.
Ignacio, hi. He says, have you ever seen a Chinese funeral? No, I haven't. But I know they wear white, don't they? That's the color of death in China. Yeah.
My parents once attended a funeral of a Chinese neighbor that they had. Well, it was the father of one of their Chinese neighbors they were very good friends. And my parents were very like it was a completely different experience for them going to a Chinese funeral. And they were very impressed by the way the Chinese funeral was. It seems to be very different to the traditions that we have in Spain or in England. And I remember they told me, I don't know if you've seen that too, Ignacio. My parents told me that the guests all brought food, and they put food around the coffin and the body. And this food, people baked food, and all of the food is supposed to accompany the dead person on their journey to the next life. That was their belief. I don't know if that's been your experience of Chinese funerals, but my parents were. It was quite an experience for them. They said to go to a Chinese funeral. It was very different, but they were very moved by the
But
funeral.
when you say different, would you say it was more cheerful, kind of more positive, happier? Because my experience of funerals in the UK and in Spain, they're very sad occasions and
Ah, well,
very
I really don't know. I'd
depressing.
have to ask my mum again whether she
Hmm.
thought it was sad or not. I'm not sure. I just remember them being very like they found the experience very different and very, I suppose it was quite impressive
Culturally.
because culturally, because it was so different. And I think, and the people had made the food, the other guests had made the food that they were giving. They hadn't just bought supermarket food and put it there, but they
Yeah.
had put a lot of love into the kind of food that they were creating to accompany the coffin. And I don't know what they did with the body, whether they buried it or cremated it. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, maybe
Mm.
Ignacio can tell us what happens if they
Hmm.
cremate in
Yeah,
Chinese
yeah.
ceremonies or if they bury.
Uh-huh.
But
Maria, just to continue with Maria again, Maria is asking, is horse and hearse pronunciation similar? No.
no,
Look at my lips, Maria. Horse. Can you see that for the OR, horse, my lips are round, horse. And hearse, my lips are more square. Can you see that? Hearse. And for horse, my lips are pointed, horse, and they're rounded. But hearse, they're a bit more square. Now, the sound, I think, Maria, you must be Spanish, I think, from Martinez. And of course, that sound in hearse doesn't exist in Spanish. I call that one the vomiting vowel because it's the vowel, it's the noise you make when you vomit, when you go, and that sound is in hearse. It's in her, not his, but her. And it's
nurse,
also in girl, GIRL. And it's also in world, around the world. So it's a tricky vowel because there's lots of different spellings. Here it's EAR. In the word world, it's ORL. In the word
girl,
girl, it's IRL. So, English, tricky.
tricky.
Just vomit, Maria, and you'll be fine.
Or it's the sound that you make on Monday morning when you get up and you think of work and you go, that's the sound you
Yeah,
need.
that's true. Uh,
Marlene says in Italy, is culturally very sad. And yeah, that's the impression I get only from
uh,
TV, Marlene, that I've seen, like on The Godfather and things like that.
yeah.
Black
Is that the
dress
total of your Italian weddings,
people. Yeah.
funerals? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think in Britain, you're right, Craig. I think also in Britain, the funerals are quite sad,
Yeah.
quite sad and melancholic. But
And
I think if I may mention a dear colleague of ours, I don't know, did you go to Carol's funeral,
yes,
Craig?
I did.
You
Yes.
did. So Craig and I both went
Half
to.
of Valencia went to that funeral,
Yeah,
I think.
and Craig and I went to a funeral many years ago to a very dear colleague of ours who died very young. And she was British, but she had Jamaican ancestry, didn't she?
Yeah, Jamaican
And
roots.
she had some Jamaican roots, and her cousins came to do the ceremony, and that was the best wedding, the best funeral. I'm sorry, but that was the best funeral I ever went to. I felt that funeral was such a lovely celebration
Well, I think
of Carol's
I
life. It was
agree.
very sad. It was very sad,
I
but
think
it was a very beautiful send off to Carol. And
I
it was a
think.
tribute to her. It was a beautiful funeral. And I think that was because of the Jamaican cousins.
Mm,
Because so obviously in Jamaica they have maybe happier funerals than we do in Spain.
but also, I think funerals should be the celebration of the person's life, and I think
Mm,
that happened at that funeral. And another
it
funeral
did.
that stuck in my mind that I remember from the UK was an Irish Catholic funeral,
Ah,
because of the wake and because that they were celebrating the life of the person. And yes, people were sad and people were crying and people were grieving, but at the same time, they were telling stories, they were playing music, they were celebrating the person's life, which I think you should do. I think that makes more sense to me, but it's a personal thing.
okay. We'll come
Where
to the
are we?
word wake. Nobody's asking yet. What's wake? But we're
What's
coming to
wake?
it. We'll
I'm
be coming to it shortly.
I'm looking for it. I don't think I have it here.
Don't worry, it might be at the end. We'll come to it later. But I think the next section we have
Offering condolences and sympathy
mhm,
to someone who is grieving. To grieve is to feel sad that somebody has died.
uh-huh,
That's the verb, to grieve. So if you are grieving, then you are really missing the person who's passed
mhm,
away, and you're very, very sad. So what can you say? What can you say to
Now
somebody
this
who
is
has?
the really important bit, I think, because this is what we all want to know what to say, don't we? So we've put a few things that we thought. Sometimes you could say, such terrible news. I'm so sorry. I think that's it. That's something that you can say to somebody. I mean, none of the words are very comforting, probably, but you have to say something. So you can say, such terrible news. I'm so sorry. A very common one is to say, I'm sorry for your loss. If you remember earlier, we were talking about a euphemism where we say we lose somebody. And we don't mean we can't find them, but it means that they died. And so here we use the noun and we say, I'm sorry for your loss. Uh-huh.
And
We also,
I
go
can't
on.
tell you how sorry I am is obviously more emphatic.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is, I have no words to describe how sad I feel for you, for what you have lost, for the loss of this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the person will be missed. She'll be sadly missed. He'll be missed by everybody. Those are
Mm-hmm.
some words of condolence. To to offer condolences is to offer sympathy and empathy to the person
Mm-hmm.
who has lost somebody.
To try to comfort them in some way. That's what condolence is. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And here are some more. I'm here for you. Obviously, there isn't much you can say, and there isn't much you can do except support the person who has experienced the loss. So you
Mm-hmm.
offer your condolences, my condolences, bit more formal, but also a nice thing to say, and just
Mm-hmm.
let the person know that you are there for them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
always here for you.
I think the difference between I'm here for you and I'd like to offer my condolences, I think that's to do with how close you are to the person really who has died. So, of course, well, I mean, how close you are to them and how close you are to the person that you are trying to comfort. So, for example, let's say it's a married couple, let's say the lady has died, and you're trying to acknowledge or say something to the husband who is grieving. You can say, I'm here for you if you are a close friend of the husband, I think. But
Yeah.
if you are a work colleague and you have never ever met the husband before, maybe you were a work colleague of the lady who died, then obviously to the person that you're trying to comfort, you haven't got that closeness. So then I think it's very appropriate to say, I'd like to offer my condolences. Mhm. There is another one that I forgot to put here, but you can also say, my deepest sympathy
Oh
is
yes.
another
Yeah.
one.
I'll put
Can
that in
you
the
put that
chat.
in the chat file? My deepest sympathy. But again, those two, I'd like to offer my condolences, or you can just say my condolences, or you can say my deepest sympathy. That's if you don't know that person very, very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Or
want to
maybe,
say,
for example, if it's a friend of yours and you're trying to say something to their parents and you've never met their parents before, but obviously their parents have more grief than possibly you would.
just want to say hello to Maria Cristina, who's joining us from Argentina, and Arturo
Hello, Maria.
from Honduras. And I'm pleased you're
Hi.
here, because if you are watching the live stream, let us know what country you're from, because if we get time today, we'd like to look at different ways of how people conduct funerals in different countries and different cultures. So if you are here from different countries, let us know where you're from. And if we get time, we'll look at different traditions. That's the word I was looking for. Different traditions from around the world. So how do you cope with... Oh, we've got some more vocabulary. Sorry,
We
I
do,
missed one.
and then we need to comment on what Ignacio's just commented too. But let's just finish this. You can say, I'll always remember him or her. That's nice. You might say, I have such fond memories of. Fond means, what would you say for fond?
Pleasant,
Pleasant
nice.
memories. And often that's that is my technique, because when I go to a funeral, I want to share my memories of that person with whoever it is who's close to them. And I think that can be very comforting, because sometimes the person who was closest to the person who died, maybe there's areas of the life that they didn't know. And when you share that with them, they have more information about the person that was very close to them. And sometimes that can be very comforting, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think
especially
so.
if
So,
you can tell a story, share a memory, that really goes a long way to offering
yeah,
condolences
it
to the
does.
person.
Uh-huh.
And there's a phrasal verb to get over something, which you can use if you just have a cold, or if you have the flu, for example. It means to recover. But obviously, if you lose somebody and you are grieving, you're very, very sad because you're grieving over the loss of that person. That is something that you never really recover from or get over. So it will take a long time to get over it, or maybe you'll never get over it, but maybe it will be better in time.
In time. And if we can just comment on Ignacio's comment, Craig, because Ignacio, there's a couple of mistakes there. And as we said, these words, it's important that you get them right at this
Yeah.
moment. So here it's, I'm sorry for your loss, LOSS, because that's a noun. Lost is a verb, so that makes no sense, right? So I'm sorry for your loss. And then you said, here I am to be close to you in this difficult moments. Now, there's a few problems there. Difficult moments is plural. So you have to say these difficult moments. And you don't really, I don't think we really say, here I am. You would say, I am here for you. I am here for you in these difficult moments. And then the next bit, I think that's just a typo, but it's whatever, what with T, whatever you need. And then I don't think we would say, take me into account.
Count on me,
You could say, count on me.
or
Whatever you need,
rely on me.
count on me, or you can rely on me. So I hope I've said that slowly enough so you can write them down and learn them, because it is important to get the right words, I think, at this time. Arturo has given a comforting word that I think people do say that the Lord is your strength during this time. If you're religious, that's something that you might want to offer to
Yeah,
the
but I think
people.
you'd only offer that if the person who has lost someone is also religious. I mean,
Yes, of course, of
I'm not
course.
a religious person, so I wouldn't find any comfort in that.
In that, yeah. I mean, obviously, it depends on what the what kind of community you're in.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then we can move on now to the next one. Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
what a
yeah.
question. Now we're coming to it.
Well, yeah, cope with, we should explain that. To cope with
Oh,
means to deal with or to manage, to get over, to deal with the loss of a loved one. I mean, I've lost people who were close to me. I lost my parents, I lost my brother-in-law, and I've lost good friends. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about losing a close friend, a colleague, an ex-colleague of ours who passed away. And well, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, only time, I think, helps. But I think it's also, it can be comforting to think that you'll always have the memories of that person. So even though they're physically not here with you, they're here in your head. Their memories are with you. So that can offer some comfort.
yeah. I think that's the way I cope with it too, to be honest with you. I think I don't like, I know that there are some people who find that they cannot talk about people that they've lost. And
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I mean, obviously, we're all different. So everybody has their own mechanisms for coping. But I'm the opposite, to be honest with you. I think for me, it's very important to keep the memories alive. And I've also lost my father, but I like talking about him. I love talking about my father because every time I talk about him, I remember him. And I lost a very close friend 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago now. And I love talking about her because when I talk about her, I remember her a lot. So for me, I suppose it depends on what the way you look at life. It also depends on your religious bearing. Some people believe in an afterlife. Some people, many people in the East believe in a cyclical form. I know that I had
Reincarnation.
reincarnation, and I know a student of mine who knows a lot about Eastern cultures. He said to me, people's attitudes are very different because of that, because they don't see life as a beginning and an end. They just see it as a constant circle. So
Well,
people don't sweat about life very
maybe we
much.
should discuss that now then, because one of the questions we had to kind of wrap up really is that idea of life after death. I've always been very envious of people who have strong faith in religion that there is something after death, because I don't believe that, and it does seem very empty and very final. And I know people who believe that there is something further after death. I feel very envious of them, very jealous, because I think, yeah, I mean, you'll probably be a lot, what's the word?
Karma,
Yeah,
maybe.
calmer, and you will accept death easily.
More
Whereas I don't,
easily.
yeah, I don't think I will.
No, I think that's true. I have a lot of faith. I'm not sure in. I think it's very hard to put my faith into words because it's not. I mean, maybe it started in religion. It hasn't necessarily. I don't think it's particularly linked to a religion. And I don't believe, for example, that I don't believe I go to heaven and have, I don't know, the kind of life that I live on earth, just better. I don't think that. I think it's something completely different. But I do believe in I think there's energy flowing through the world. And I think it is cyclical. And I believe very much that we live in an ecosystem, I think. And when you die, there's a physical part of you, obviously, that dies, which is your body. But I do believe that your spirit and your soul enters the ecosystem again somehow. And at the very least, I think that everybody has an impact on other human beings. And as long as you live on in the memory of another human being, you are also impacting. And as you live in the memory of that human being, they in turn become a kind of human being that they go on to influence. And so that's where I see the cycle.
That's very Buddhist, because
Is it?
they, yeah, I've
Yeah.
got in my notes here that Buddhists in Mongolia and Tibet believe that the soul and the spirit moves on after death and the body is just empty.
Yeah.
In fact, what they do as a burial ceremony is that they chop up the body into small pieces and they put it on the top of a mountain so
Oh.
that the elements
Mm-hmm.
and vultures and birds and other animals can carry the body away, which is empty, but then it
Mm-hmm.
also recycles into a kind of energy that you're talking
Energy
about. So
ecosystem.
for me, what you've just described is the belief in Buddhism in
Oh,
parts of the
wow. Well,
world.
I didn't know that. I thought, but I don't know. I think there's I suppose it depends how close you feel identified with the world where you live as well. Like I don't know, maybe that. But I'm not really. I don't think I'm particularly worried about death. I think the time when I was most worried about death was when my children were small, because I didn't want them to be left alone. But now that my children are older, I think I'm quite cool about it. I mean, I don't know if I get into a situation, of course, I'm just telling you now how I feel because I'm healthy and I feel fine. But maybe if I get ill or whatever, which I'm sure at some point in my life I will, maybe I think differently. We should never say never, should we? So.
Nestor says, how do you call the period after a loved one? I would say a loved one. So love, not a
A loved person, a loved one.
loved one
Uh-huh.
dies. Duelo. It's
Uh-huh. Mourning.
morning, not
Uh-huh.
morning, evening, afternoon. No, morning. MOURN.
Urning. But this is the same pronunciation as morning or afternoon. So if you are in mourning, traditionally in Spain, in mourning, the partners used to wear black. I remember my husband's grandmother, when his grandfather died, she wore black for the rest of her life
Yeah, like for
because
Queen
she was
Victoria.
in mourning. So that tradition was quite common still in Spain until fairly recently. I don't think many people do it now, but my she was not my grandmother, but my husband's grandmother definitely followed that tradition. So that's the mourning. And in Britain, it was common to have a mourning period. So I don't know what it was, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year in Victorian times, but it was a very special period. And that was when you wore black. And then people came out of mourning. And that's when they started to wear other colors again. But I know that the tradition in Spain for some people was to never come out of mourning again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marlene says that the best medicine to get over a loss is time. However, the emptiness will always be there. With time, you manage to cope with it because slowly pain fades away and you accept it. Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very well
of course.
expressed, Marlene.
Yeah, very
And
well. Your English is perfect there.
ex-student of mine,
Ah.
just saying. Not that I had anything to do with the way Marlene writes because she was in my conversation course, but it's still. But I saw that with
Okay.
my sister because I mentioned earlier that my brother-in-law passed away during COVID in 2020, and obviously the first year of mourning for her was really, really hard. And of course, she hasn't got over his death. She still mourns him and thinks of him. But I noticed with her, it has got easier over time. She can now look at photos of him. She can maybe see a home video of him, speak about him with other people. It's become a lot easier for her over the
Yeah.
last 2 years. So time does heal and
Does
does
heal.
help you to heal.
And I think it is important if you can somehow, you have to, I mean, well, again, it's a personal impression, but for me, it would be very important. It's important to bring these people back into your own narrative, because if you don't bring them back into your narrative, then they disappear totally. And I don't know, I don't like that feeling that they disappear. Rigoberto, I hope I've said that right. You said, that's a tradition that has a social explanation. I think you're talking about mourning Can you tell us what the social explanation is? Because I don't know what that is. Do you know the social
No,
explanation of mourning?
can you
Maybe you can
explain a bit
help us.
more, Rigoberto?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us,
Yeah.
give us more information about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ignacio says that without any doubt, you're here to illuminate our lives. You're an inspiration for us. I believe in you, and God believes in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who the you is there.
No.
Is it you, Lynn?
No, I don't think it's me. But maybe is that something that you would want to say to somebody? Maybe
Oh, perhaps. Yeah.
you want to say that
Yeah.
to somebody. You are here to illuminate our lives. You are an inspiration. I believe in you, and God believe in all of us. Maybe to comfort people. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think we've got time for one more question. There was one that I thought
Uh-huh.
was quite interesting. Shall we go there? Yeah, let's go there. We've spoken about everything else. How would you like your end of life to be handled?
Handled. Mm.
Handled, because you're not going to be able to make any
Nah.
decisions. So,
Well, some people do, no? I have to say. I wanted to actually talk about, I had been reading recently that there are some people who have living funerals now.
really?
And yeah. And it's a new trend. And your living funeral, this is especially for people who do have those terminal diagnoses. And when you have the terminal diagnosis because you're suffering from an illness like cancer or whatever, some people now are deciding to have a living funeral. So they make a big party, they invite their friends, and it's a farewell, but a living farewell, because they say they want to hear their friends talk good things about them while they're still alive. And it's a kind of celebration. It's a very interesting concept. Mm-hmm. It's obviously
Well,
not religious. It's not obviously, maybe this is for people who are not religious, who when you mentioned earlier, it's kind of quite when they think it's really final, and so they decide they really want to say goodbye, but in a nice way. So the day or the ceremony or the event is all about them, but it's kind of a collective memory of the
quite egocentric,
impact
isn't
of
it?
people. Yeah.
Have to have
So are
quite a big
weddings.
ego. I
So
want to hear all the good
the
things you're
things you
going
want
to
to
say
say.
about me, because when I'm dead, I won't be able to hear them. But people do say that you should live
Mm-hmm.
your life with the end in mind. You
Yeah.
should. What do you want people to say about you at your funeral?
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
what you should work towards morally, ethically, and live a
Mm-hmm.
good life, because that's what you want people to say about you.
Mm-hmm. So, Craig, how would you like your end of life to be handled? What can we do for you? Can we take you to Hawaii?
Well, I've chosen a couple of songs I'd like.
Oh, have you?
Return to Sender, Elvis Elvis Presley.
Trust you to keep this light. Go on.
Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, Monty
Uh-huh.
Python.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I don't know. I just like the end to be. I think it is just a passing. I think humans like to believe that there's something after death, but I don't believe it. So I really don't care, because I won't be around to see it. I'd like
Uh-huh.
it to be painless if possible, and quick,
Mm-hmm.
and with no
Mm-hmm.
regrets. I wouldn't like
Mm-hmm.
to be lying there thinking, oh, I wish I'd have done that, or I wish I'd have seen that country, or I wish I'd have said that to that person. So I think it's really important to live every second of your life, and also
Mm-hmm.
tell people that you love them. That's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
what I
important.
would
Yeah.
say.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What about you,
Well,
Lynn?
I'd given lots of thoughts to this. When I was a little girl, I thought, yeah, I want to be cremated. I didn't like the idea of being buried in the ground, because on the television, when they used to show like the police shows and they would dig up and you saw the skeleton in the coffin, I thought, I don't want to look like that. Because I've always liked to try to look my best. So I don't want to look like that. So I decided very early on I wanted to be cremated. And then I had for a very long time this sort of romantic image. I wanted my ashes to be sprinkled in a particular place that meant a lot to me. It was a place in England, it was in the countryside, and it was the place that I felt very attached to. So I used to tell everybody, that's where I want my ashes sprinkled. When I die, you have to sprinkle my ashes there. And I thought about that all the time, actually, until my father died and he was cremated. And my mother didn't really know what to do with the ashes. And then when it came, and so in the end, they've kept the ashes and they're going to be buried together. When my mother passes on, she would like her ashes to go with his. But then I really thought about it and I thought, I don't think I could actually put my hand in some ashes and sprinkle them. It's something that I find I don't think I could do.
You don't have to. You could, because I did this with
Yes,
you can just shake
you can
it.
do that. I know. But if the wind blows the wrong way and
You
blows
got
them
to be,
back at
you've
you,
got to be with the wind to your
and
back.
and then I thought to myself, this is an awful lot to put through the poor people who are left behind. I mean, assuming that the people are sad when I die, which you never know, they might be happy. But if they're sad when I
Of
die, I
course
thought,
they'll be sad.
this is not a nice thing to make them do. So now I'm telling everybody, look, just cremate me and just put the urn in the bin or in the ground or somewhere. Just, you don't even have to have an urn. Just, put them directly on the earth and that's it. I don't think it's necessary to have a grave. I don't want to be in a cemetery. I don't want people to have to keep going there. I want them to remember me forever on YouTube with you, Craig. They can just put me on an eternal loop.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, this shirt might be around in 100 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know if Elvis is dead. Maybe
Obviously
he's
not
still
if you're
alive.
using him at your funeral.
But even if he is still alive, I don't think he'll be singing at my funeral.
I don't think you will be either.
No. Rigoberto says he'd like to be with his relatives and family. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Marlene, being philosophic. My ashes dispersed in the air, sprinkled in the air, or in the sea to reconnect with nature. Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I think I'd like my ashes at the bottom of a tree somewhere with a nice view.
At the bottom of a tree, yeah.
Yeah. And Rigoberto says that buried in the ground is the most natural way. Put the rest of the body. I think the burned body has economic reason nowadays.
Yeah.
Ecological reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think buried in the ground is at her. But I think it's because there's no space. I mean, the population in the world has increased. And I used to actually live where I grew up in Sunderland in England. At the back of my back garden was the town cemetery. So I've always been growing up around gravestones and things like this. And the cemetery was there. And I was very shocked to find out that most people, you get your plot of land. I never realized this, but you only buy your plot for like 100 years. And regularly in the graveyard that was next to my house, there were areas of the graveyard that were already over 100 years. And then they basically get the bulldozers in and they bulldoze the land to rebury other people. So
but you're not going
cases,
to know, though. You're not going to know anything about it. You're dead.
But you kind of have the sensation that you're going in the earth forever. But in actual fact, you're not. And then sometimes you dug up. And then if you're dug up, they probably cremate you anyway. I mean, it's 100 years on, so you don't know, obviously. But it's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's also not ecological, apparently, because there's lots of like non-compostable materials in the coffin and things, apparently.
Anyway, I hope this has not been too depressing, and at least you've learned some vocabulary. And first of all, thank you very much for keeping us company and joining us.
Yeah, and I think you've all been very brave coming in on this, because a lot of people might not want to talk about it. So I think You're very grave. Brave, not grave. Oh,
Great,
I'm
you're very.
talking grave. Grave is we never used that. We never taught that vocabulary.
Yeah, I
Grave
think
is
we
the
did. Grave.
area of land where you're actually buried. The hole in the ground is called the grave. So
Oh no, we didn't. We didn't. Let me put that in
we
the
didn't
chat as
teach
well.
grave,
We
no.
didn't teach grave.
And I wanted to say you were very brave, but you see, that's the Freudian slip there, isn't it?
That was a grave mistake, not teaching the
Yeah.
word grave.
Yeah, and grave means serious, the way that Craig's using it there. A grave mistake means a very serious mistake.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, thank you for being with us and keeping us company. We'll quickly remind you who we are and how you can get in touch with us if you need help with your English.
So my name's Lynn. My company is called putitlikethis.com. If you have a specific need in English, so you maybe want to need English for your business, maybe you want to pass an exam, maybe you just want to go on holiday and be able to manage in hotels. Whatever your need is, then you explain it to me, and then I try to create a course just to help you specifically achieve that goal. So if you're interested, you can go to my website, putitlikethis.com. You can find out information about the type of courses I offer, and you can also get in touch with me over the website. Okay?
Okay, and if you are a Spanish speaker, and I know a lot of you are, you can study for free with the material on mansioningles.com. And if you prefer to do other things while you're improving your English, like exercising, walking the dog, or driving, you can listen to our podcast at inglespodcast.com or wherever you find your podcasts. And if you want to improve your speaking and get more fluency in your life, go to my website, englishcraig.com, and book a 10-minute chat with me, and I'll let you know what your level is and the schedule of lessons available for you to join some lovely people and improve your speaking. So thank you very much for keeping us company. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a different topic. And until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.